Bonjour, professeur Prigent. On se retrouve pour un documentaire sur Stephen Jones. Mais qui est Stephen Jones ?
Stephen Jones est un génie. Stephen Jones est aujourd'hui le plus célèbre modiste.
Tasteless.
Stephen Jones, c'est la personne qu'on est toujours content de croiser pendant les tournages sur les défilés. C'est quelqu'un de super souriant, super disponible, enfin, pas toujours disponible.
Son œuvre commence en 1980 à Londres avec la fondation de sa propre maison de chapeaux, Stephen Jones Millinery.
A hat is a passport to another world.
Fait rarissime, le musée de la mode, le Palais Galliera, lui consacre une rétrospective de son vivant. L'exposition, aussi géniale que lui, se concentre sur son rapport à la mode parisienne.
What's a hat? You're supposed to put on your head, but I guess you could put it on your knee.
It's fashion. Why make it simple when you can make it complicated?
C'est l'occasion de découvrir ses chapeaux les plus excentriques, les plus spirituels.
I always thought in 3 dimensions.
Ah ouais. Et pour ce documentaire, on a fait une moisson incroyable de défilés des années 80, 90, 2000, 2010, 2020.
Ses collaborations avec les grands noms qui défilent à Paris, comme des garçons, Thierry Mugler, Jean-Paul Gaultier, Christian Dior, Claude Montana, Thom Browne, Louis Vuitton avec Marc Jacobs et Nicolas Ghesquière.
Surrealism is always an element in my work.
Walter Van Beirendonck, Schiaparelli par Daniel Rosberry, Asdin Alaya.
The one thing about hats is they're not stationary. They move. They're creatures of the air.
On visite l'exposition avec le maître.
Non.
Et lors d'un entretien, il nous raconte tout en détail, les bons détails qui croustillent.
I don't know if they were lovers or not, but they lived together in London.
Subtitles are available, you just need to turn them on. Et c'est pareil, quand il parle en anglais, vous activez les sous-titres.
Voici Chapeau Stephen Jones.
Stephen, you leave your ego by the front door.
Et sinon, après ça, vous prenez votre smartphone ou votre ordinateur et vous allez sur fashionmoodboard.com. Il y a des milliards d'articles hyper longs sur la mode. C'est notre site, c'est à nous. C'est en anglais et en français. Et ce qu'on vous propose par exemple en complément de cette vidéo, c'est non seulement l'entretien dans sa longueur passionnant avec Stephen Jones, mais aussi plein d'articles afférents sur les chapeaux. Allez sur fashionmoodboard.com.
Octobre 2024, le jour de l'ouverture de l'exposition, le chapelier Stephen Jones accueille tout sourire ses invités.
Combien de chapeaux vous montrez en dessous ?
Alors on a 170 chapeaux, 42 silhouettes et au total 400 œuvres parce qu'il y a des documents, des cartons d'invitation, etc.
Comment vous avez fait pour choisir dans 170 chapeaux ? Parce que c'est ce qu'il produit par jour à peu près.
C'est pas simple.
En 1983, Jean-Paul Gaultier n'est pas encore le roi soleil de la mode parisienne. Mais en fait si, c'est pile cette année-là qu'il devient le roi soleil de la mode parisienne et d'une certaine avant-garde.
Tell me about Jean-Paul Gaultier. How do you meet him?
I had met him in the Blitz Club because he used to go there. You know, he was a god. He saw me in the video of Do You Really Want to Hurt Me by Culture Club. I'm just sort of sitting there at a table in a nightclub having a drink, but I'm wearing a 3-piece suit and a fez. And that corresponded a little bit to what he wanted to do in his collection because he was doing very sort of traditional 1940s 3-piece suits. He asked me to be in the show, but I had fractured my leg, so I couldn't walk in the show. Jean-Paul said to me, would you be interested in doing hats for my women's show, making hats for me? I mean, that was not my intention. And I said, well, yes. And he said, well, I'm going for lunch now. I'll be out for about an hour and a half or 2 hours. You do some sketches, I'll look at them when I come back. I was like, oh my God. So I went out and I bought a pad of paper, pale blue, I never forget, with lines on it. And I bought a pencil and I just sat and sketched. And he came back and he went through them and he said, yes, no, 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 yes, no. And then he said, well, in a few days' time, my assistant will be in touch and give you quantities. And so we made the hats in London, I made with my workroom. and amazingly enough, took Polaroids of all of them, and those Polaroids are in the Palais Galliera exhibition, and we still have them now. And then those hats became the beginning of my work in Paris. This was my first work here.
Leur premier défilé ensemble, c'est la collection Barbès, au firmament des meilleures collections de Gaultier. C'est au cirque d'hiver à Paris, Inès de la Fressange avec une écharpe nouée autour de la tête, des nœuds qui créent des architectures aléatoires, des franges, une casquette, des petits bonnets trop petits, l'écharpe qui est un geste et il y a des genres de badges à l'arrière. Et regardez, Stephen Jones apparaît même sur le podium dans son propre rôle, la mascotte. Le turban licorne ou queue de scorpion, une ébullition de velours comme un bonnet phrygien fashion. Phrygien fashion. Pour une collection haute couture de 2018, Stephen Jones et Jean-Paul Gaultier se retrouvent et rééditent le premier fez frangé, le fez en strass dégradé, le fez du soir, le fez l'amour pas la guerre.
What is your childhood like?
It was quite a dream, really. I don't really know if I inhabited reality or fantasy. It was by the seaside in the northwest of England, but it was a very bleak place. Because it was the 60s, I had this fantasy of outer space, it was the moon landing, it was science fiction, which was completely different to where we were living.
This is Peggy and Gordon, my parents.
Oh wow. She had a head for hats?
Yeah, she always wore hats. It was very funny in this photo session, she was a bit awkward. And then the hairdresser said to her, "Peggy, you've got very good legs." And then she would do exactly what everybody wanted.
My mother, very unfashionable to say nowadays, but she was a housewife. And my father was an engineer. I thought we were terribly poor because we couldn't have a space rocket of our own or a helicopter to take me to school. My father did influence me. I mean, what I do is engineering. My best subjects at school were art and physics. So I guess I combined those later in life, even though I didn't realize it at the time.
These are my father's hats. This is his rugby caps, because he was quite a star rugby player. This is from 1936 and 1937. He might have played for England, but of course 1939, the war came. But I still have his caps, so these are the oldest ones.
Et regardez, le chapeau de rugby de son père, retravaillé avec des couleurs.
My mother was an avid gardener. She was a wonderful, wonderful gardener who knew about placement of colour and of time. When I was at college, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to create, but I did not know what path my life would take. Absolutely not.
I went to this exhibition in V&A, and it was called Fashion 1900 to 1939. I went to this in 1975, and in it, there's a picture of Pat Cleveland wearing it here, was the very famous Charles James jacket. And there's only one in the world, and that was in that exhibition, and I thought, wow, that looks incredible. I want to get into fashion. And that was really this eureka moment. I was inspired by Balenciaga and Charles James in particular, Charles James more than anything. And at that time, this was during punk times, and I was the only person interested in actually the art of dressmaking and haute couture and all of that world. There were no books, there were no reference material, but I found a pile of magazines in the college library that somebody had donated, and there were pictures of all those women in those poses, wearing Dior, wearing Balenciaga, wearing Jacques Fat. I realized that their attitude was the same as like Johnny Rotten and as all the punks. Their attitude was the same because it was very much like, don't touch me because I'm superior. And I thought that was such a fantastic and ridiculous attitude that it could be an inspiration. It wasn't about being your best friend. When I left college, this is my leaving dress because I was doing women's wear. So we still have this.
This is many sleepless nights back in the day?
Oh my God, yes. And if I could make a more technically difficult dress to make, It doesn't exist. Because you can't fit it. It's got wire in it. Even in those days I was doing wire. I can't believe I still have this dress.
I left college in 1979 and I started my company on the 1st of October 1980. At that time, we didn't think about business at all. The idea of money and doing something for money was vulgar. You'd be doing it to be good, you'd be doing it for creativity, you'd be doing it to impress and honour the people you knew. We thought it was our duty. To us, money was a necessary evil, I guess, but we lived on almost nothing. I was making clothes at the same time because I did women's wear at St. Martin's. So even now, when I'm sketching a hat, I normally draw a backbone and I draw the body and then the head and then I put a hat on it. So I'm always thinking of a body, which is why I'm interested in collaborating with designers.
En 1984, c'est Azzedine Alaïa qui va le présenter à la scène de jeunes créateurs.
Alaïa. I first met Azzedine, I suppose it was 1983 or 84, and he was a god already. You were really aware of what he was doing. I showed him a few hats that I'd made, and he said, "Oh, these are wonderful." He said, "I love hats." He said, Elsa Schiaparelli gave me her own hats for my collection. But he said, "I do know somebody who does need hats at the moment." And he telephoned Thierry Mugler for me then and there. And Thierry was leaving his office to go to Brussels, I think. And so we rushed over to Thierry and showed hats, and that's how I started to work with Thierry Mugler, through Azzedine.
Alaïa présente donc Jones à Mugler. La première collaboration est épique, directe, on est dans les livres de mode.
Thierry, I started to work on his show at the Zenit, and this was a big show. I think there were 6,000 people. He actually sold tickets to the show to the public. It was work in progress until the girl went on stage. It was beyond last minute. It was just you were working on this thing and it was becoming... In fact, the halo headdress, I think we remade it about 3 or 4 times.
Stephen Jones fait donc le fameux halo du dernier passage, porté par Pat Cleveland, qui arrive dans les airs du Zénith. Pour le défilé des Olympiades de Thierry Mugler, printemps-été 1984, Stephen Jones signe les bonnets de bain, les bérets macarons, la cloche imperméable, le béret avec son accroche-cœur intégré, des gavroches revisitées, les poignards de chignon. Pour l'été 1985, des visières devenues chapeaux, tous les tableaux en Stephen Jones, des fedoras en paille noire, des bobs d'apicultrice snob. Zzz, oh, tais-toi. Le chapeau soleil dans le dos pour un effet multi-sunset. Les pailles non terminées parce qu'elle ne veut pas se planquer derrière une visière. Un ruban suffit. Des bonnets phrygiens noirs pour des révolutionnaires du chiffon. Des bouchons d'oreilles colorés. On dirait pas des bouchons d'oreilles ? Des réductions de tambourins, des couronnes inca too muchissime. Été 1986, des spirales d'or posées sur l'extrémité d'un chignon olympique, des bandeaux qui resculptent le front façon Wonder Woman, héroïne, des casques d'or comme des tiares de conquérantes. Le rival de Mugler, c'est Montana. Les deux ex se battent à coups de défilés spectaculaires. Peut-on travailler pour les deux à la fois ? Bien sûr que non.
Well, it was complicated. As far as I understand, Claude and Thierry had been great friends when they lived in London. I don't know if they were lovers or not, but they lived together in London. When they came back, Thierry became a designer, and Claude, 6 months later, also started to design. Claude had asked me for maybe 2 years or something if I could work with him, and I'd always turned him down. And eventually he asked me to work on a men's show, which was maybe his first men's show. So I agreed to do that after trying to ask Thierry. But my world with Thierry fell apart at that point. That's the short version.
Pour l'été 1986 de Claude Montana, Stephen Jones imagine des géométries posées sur la tête, des visières ambitieuses, des vinylades conceptuelles et méchantes. Montana, quoi. Une émulsion de mousseline qu'on arrache. Claude Montana sort avec elle comme un tigre qui mâche son chewing-gum et il se touche le nez en bout de podium. Avec Montana, Stephen Jones explore l'aérodynamique, le chapeau de la mariée qui est la déesse du vent. C'est la mariée Montana de l'été 1988.
Sometimes the brief is very abstract. I remember once Claude Montana said to me, I said, what's the inspiration for this collection? He said, wind, le vent.
Et quand elle salue avec lui, on réalise qu'elle est plutôt la déesse du sèche-cheveux, qu'il a manifestement utilisée pendant 2 heures ce matin-là. L'attitude précisément voulue par Claude Montana qui est enfin captée, gelée.
Thierry. Even 25 years later, we were sat next to each other at dinner, and he turned his back on me. He never forgave me. However, at his exhibition at the Musée des Arts Décoratifs, I saw him there, and from the far side of the room, he shouted Stephen, and we gave huge hugs to each other, and all was forgiven and forgotten. I mean, it was so sad because 2 weeks later he died. It is so strange that the designers who I first worked with, like Azzedine, Claude, Thierry, are no longer with us. But strangely enough for me, they still are, because they're still a huge influence on me. And it's a real honor to have been able to collaborate with them and to get to know them and to understand them. So for me, in a way, they're eternal. They are sort of in the past, but that's great because there's new designers to work with, like Matty Boven, like younger designers with a younger point of view, and they are doing things which reflect the times that we are in now.
Avec Matty Bovan, Stephen Jones délire. Le nœud géant, le képi asymétrique, la chapka qui recoiffe et résout le problème des cheveux écrasés par le couvre-chef. Le turban élégant, un haut de forme trop grand et posé de travers, la silhouette de Matty Bovan qui devient encore plus intrigante. À partir de septembre 1982, une des plus phénoménales collaborations est celle avec Rei Kawakubo de Comme des garçons. Les images n'ont pas vieilli. On sent encore d'ici à quel point ces collections sont une claque pour l'establishment de la mode. Les défilés Comme des garçons sont exactement l'inverse de ce qui se fait à l'époque. C'est Rei Kawakubo en personne qui l'aborde dans un aéroport et qui lui donne son numéro de téléphone.
We exchanged phone numbers and she said, please call me in Tokyo. And we went and we had dinner together. She invited me for dinner and we talked and we started to work together. This was pre-fax. So if I did a sketch in London, because it was a sketch, it was a dutiable item, so it would took 5 or 6 days to get to Japan. So you can understand the dynamic of designing was very, very different then.
Comme des torchons noués, des choses abstraites, un jeu de pliage noir, un origami chic, Kaplan anarchique, en fait des pliages, l'invention d'un nouveau folklore, des fils suspendus qui partent d'un bibi classique, comme des traits de crayon qui sortent de la tête, le maquillage fait à la main sur le visage. Cette collection est un choc mondial. Des turbans noués à la va-vite calculée, des tissus couvre-chef qui se plient ou se chiffonnent à l'arrière, des chapeaux en flou dans la même matière que les vêtements. Canotier déchiqueté et retravaillé, en casquette dont la paille est comme arrachée, capeline retournée vers l'avant, une ébauche de paille, la déconstruction ajourée. Les pailles comme un nid, innocence et pureté.
We have a little matador hat. There's a pair of bunny ears, there's a crown, and there's a fedora cut in half. Each one completely different, because what Ray wants from me is not the hat that she expects. If I ever make anything which I think would suit a Comme des Garçons show or a collection, automatically she will reject it. Because what she wants is the different, she wants the spice in the mixture. She might say, the collection's about green, or I'm thinking about world peace, or I'm thinking about miniature. So it's an abstract brief. Sometimes she might say, I'm thinking about England. And in the background of that, I remember once I did some quite simple hats, straw hats for her, very simple. And I spoke to Adrian Joffe and I said, you know, Ray could have these made anywhere. Why is she having them made by me? And the reply came back because she said, I want my hats to be made by an English gentleman. Et voilà. I love playing with visuals, playing with visual motifs. So there is one particular vitrine, which is about food, and there's a salad niçoise but made from straw. There is a peanut butter and jelly sandwich but made from sheepskin. There's a French onion soup, toque, which I made in about 1983, really a long time ago. When I think of British things, I tend to think of things which are not necessarily elegant, but they're charming and they have a certain sweetness to them.
Le haut de forme est un classique de la garde-robe que Stephen Jones aime torturer, sublimer, maximiser, rétrécir. C'est le chapeau qui symbolise les banquiers ultra riches, le pouvoir, le patriarcat sonnant et trébuchant, donc autant le dézinguer.
I've always loved top hat because it's great on everybody.
Is it?
Yes. There's something which has got a swagger and an élan to it, and it's sort of sexy as well. It makes everybody look good.
Pour Comme des garçons hommes plus, c'est le chapeau du conformisme anglais qu'on détourne, un haut de forme trop haut, trop melon, scalpé. Un haut de forme dont le rebord sourit. Un haut de forme argent, un haut de forme écrasé sur lequel un punk s'est assis. En violet, en rose fluo, en jonquille. Le haut de forme XXXXL post-capitaliste pour Walter van Beirendonck ou micro-mini qui ressemble à un pion du Monopoly. Ces chapeaux melons sont nombreux, les plus fameux resteront sans doute ceux qu'il réalise pour Dior Homme par Kim Jones et qui sont peints à la main par son ami le grand peintre britannique Peter Doig avant d'être vendus aux enchères pour une œuvre caritative.
Interestingly enough, I think that hats and surrealism have always gone together. I mean, I think a hat by its very nature, the fact that you're just putting something on your head, is surreal.
À partir de 1995, Stephen Jones profite d'une collaboration prolixe avec le créateur belge Walter van Beirendonck. Les défilés sont fleuves et on sent que tout est possible. Des fantaisies de mousse, le thème d'une science-fiction pop, des masques à messages. Beaucoup de casques iroquois, casques à queue, casques à pique, casques roses, casques à boules, les casques de guerriers de Pluton, intimidation, massifs et noirs, des vaisseaux spatiaux des Iroquois, des bonnets fluo, les chapeaux psychédéliques fleuris, papillons, champignons magiques, la casquette XXXL, le seau sur la tête, le chapeau plastique, le gavroche XXL, le double chapeau melon XXL, une bassine noire parfaite, un haut de forme XXL, une décharge d'ordinateur, un fedora XXL, des enfants qui volent les chapeaux des parents, le casque du cycliste XXL, le casque pré-Daft Punk, le chapeau monde.
Walter, he first contacted me like 25 years ago, it was a long time ago, and he was doing a show and there was, I think, 125 models in it, and every person had a hat on it. It was like the biggest production. Huge. And I loved his world because it was cartoony. I had never expressed myself like that before.
Et avec Walter van Beirendonck, Stephen Jones confronte l'art du chapeau à la nature, exercice obligatoire des modistes. On y va littéral, la feuille, le nénuphar, la feuille de bananier, la coccinelle, le palmier, le papillon puéril, la chenille pompon, le buisson, le lierre, la bestiole, la poupée, l'aquarium, la fleur, la pivoine, les parasols de cocktail, le dragon, les insectes posés sur une feuille. Les hommes ont des chapeaux Mad Max menaçants mais qui tournicotent. Le chapeau alter ou la protection anti-bruit, la bombe de cheval XXL, le chapeau de cow-boy XXL, le casque militaire en feutre chic, la coiffe politique à message contre le racisme et contre le fascisme qu'on recommande pour les manifestations.
Walter's hats are very big, they go against the law of gravity, but that's where my genetics as being an engineer of how to balance it, how to make that thing work on the head, how heavy is it.
Encore de la politique, la visière qui sépare le visage, ma personnalité en public, ma personnalité à la maison. Tout comme ci ou tout comme ça. Devant mes amis, je suis comme ça, devant mes parents, je suis comme ça. Devant mon patron, je suis comme ça, devant mes amis, je suis comme ça.
Hats are about being in a good mood. I mean, I hope so. That's really its purpose. Flower hats are always a challenge because a flower in a hat is the most obvious and the most simple thing to do. What happens if you put a black orchid on it, or a red peony, or a glycine, which is flexible and waving in the wind? Each one has got a whole world, an opera of meaning within it. Anything that you do is always about imitation. I mean, you just look out into the garden, you could take a leaf, you take a blade of grass, anything like that from nature is vastly superior to what man can create. There's a few different hats in there. There's one which is like a rose. I tried to make the perfect French rose, which is called Je ne sais quoi. But actually, the reality of that hat was, it was originally a toile I'd made for John Galliano at Dior, and he rejected it. But I thought it was one of my best designs, so I took it back, reworked it in London, and it became part of my collection.
Sa collaboration avec Louis Vuitton commence par un appel à l'aide de Marc Jacobs au milieu des années 2000.
Marc Jacobs at Vuitton, I shall never forget. It's so funny. I just got back to my hotel room at maybe 2 a.m. and I had to be back at work at 6 a.m. And I had a phone call from Katie Grand, who was at Vuitton, and she said, at 2 o'clock in the morning, fashion, it's 24 hours a day, you know? And she said, I'm at Vuitton with Marc Jacobs. We have a problem with some hats. Could you come and help? I sent her a text back saying, Katie, I just came back to have a shower. And after I'd sent it, I remembered that Marc had actually helped some friends of mine out in New York many years beforehand and had really taken care of them. And I thought, in the grand scope of things, maybe I should be there. I mean, I was dead tired even then. So they sent a car for me. I arrived at Vuitton and there were these hats which were like bobs, like bucket hats, and they were oversized, but they'd been made on a hard base. And they looked very, very strict. And Marc said, they're wrong with it, they just look wrong. And I don't know why. And I said, Marc, because they're too hard. I said, they need to look something like this. And I picked one up and I just took it and I screwed it like that, and then screwed it in the opposite direction. And I put it on the girl. And he said, that's it. And the whole thing took me 20 seconds. Marc took me to the lift and he said, thank you so much for doing that. You're going to send me an invoice, aren't you? And I said, well, yeah, not really. I said, no. He said, well, come to the shop and I'll arrange something for you. So a few days later, I went to the shop and I was met by all the people from Louis Vuitton, and they said, you can have whatever you want. And I did.
Pour Louis Vuitton, cela commence donc sous la houlette de Marc Jacobs, comme des drapés de tulle colorés, des jeux de graphisme, des spirales, des enrubannés hyper contrôlés, le grand béret, le chapeau mou pour dissimuler son cache, des couronnes de fleurs teintées dans le thé. Le défilé pour l'été 2014 est le dernier de Marc Jacobs chez Louis Vuitton, un chant du cygne qui est un chant de la plume de pan noir. Toutes les mises en scène précédentes sont reproduites en noir, le manège, l'ascenseur, la fontaine, et les mannequins portent toutes des coiffes spectaculaires aussi grandes qu'elles.
Basically, the collection was done in about a week. We worked on various prototypes. He had pictures of Theda Bara and of silent movies and all that sort of thing, big headdresses. They were made from peacock feathers and they were all dyed black. And, you know, these things were major constructions and it was getting closer and closer. And Marc said, I don't know if I want to have them or not. He really hadn't decided if he wanted to have them. And I had to make, I can't remember, 60 hats or something like that. They had to have metal cages on the underneath to support the weight so it looked effortless. Literally, I had peacock feathers coming from Germany, from Belgium, from Paris, from Milan on trucks overnight. Every hat maker in Paris was working for 3 days through the night to get them all ready in time, but they looked incredible. It was a sigh of relief that I did it and I did not die in the process. Because when you do it, you give your everything. Otherwise, what's the point? It's life, not a rehearsal. When the show finished, I actually did cry.
You cry often?
Do I cry often? Yeah, but at silly films.
Nicolas Ghesquière, arrivé chez Louis Vuitton, lui confie les chapeaux de sa collection été 2022, des splendeurs qui brillent de mille feux.
For this particular one, he was looking at party clothes almost from the 1920s and 1930s, that fullness, the idea of panier and the idea of dance. And I looked at Art Deco figurines from the 1910s, 1920s, French ones, which are like little dancing figurines, often made in ebony or in ivory. And that's what they were inspired by, the sort of 20s, 30s, this sort of idea of the tiny little decorative headdress.
Il travaille aussi chez Vuitton pour la ligne masculine de Kim Jones à l'époque. Des chapeaux plats qui créent des horizontalités sur la tête, des bonnets qui ne s'arrêtent que pour se replier sur eux-mêmes. Avec Kim Jones chez Dior, la complicité est réelle, d'une régularité absolue. Kim Jones le considère comme un allié indispensable de chaque collection Dior.
Work with Kim is sort of extraordinary because I know that I was quite a hero for him. So when somebody says that to you, it puts things in a very different footing. But the reality is you've still got to make the hat that he likes. And when I take the hat out of the boxes for him, he's either going to say, yes, that looks lovely, or, I don't think this time. Maybe we'll keep it for next season, which means he completely loathes it. Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you have to have an ego, but you have to be a good listener too, because the designer has a new vision of beauty and ugliness that maybe you don't know about. And if you respect the designer, you just have to trust them to take you to a place that you don't know about. And if you're working with them, you should be respecting them. So when they say it should be green and I'm thinking pink, maybe they're saying green for a good reason that I just don't understand about yet. And therefore, you just have to bite your lip and hope that they're right. Sometimes they're not, but you know, hey.
Les défilés Dior Homme de Kim Jones ne s'envisagent pas sans la touche finale de Stephen Jones. Des bérets de surfeurs, des chapeaux melons et des bobs fleuris. Des casquettes logotées, des casquettes du désert, le bon béret de marin mais avec comme des ailes inspirées par les carrosseries des voitures américaines des années 50. Des pulls taille enfant enfilés sur la tête. Stephen Jones a commencé chez Dior en 1997. Ses collaborations pour les différents designers de la maison pourraient remplir plusieurs musées et faire l'objet de plusieurs expositions. Maria Grazia-Chiuri est la première à visiter l'exposition du Palais Galliera et elle observe absolument tous les détails. Avec lui, la collaboration pour Dior est riche.
I first met Maria Grazia at the Met in New York at the Met Ball. I said, I've made some hats to go with your dresses. I hope you like them. And she did say to me, I will tell you when I've seen them. So, you know, I knew that she was a good judge. We started to work together, and for her first haute couture collection, what was extraordinary was she included all my sketches of hats in the program for the show, and no other sketches from any other department. There were my little thumbnail sketches next to each outfit. So that was the greatest honour. And she's become a real hat designer. And she's a real hat wearer too.
Des coiffes de plumes, le masque de chauve-souris, les coiffes pour ne pas passer les portes, des branchages, des feuillages, les plumes tellement hautes que ça pourrait épousseter le plafond de la chapelle Sixtine. Le même béret martelé pendant tout le défilé. Un chapeau à large rebord pour le désert. Des masques pleins d'imagination, le surréalisme, des masques pour révéler le regard des œuvres d'art. Le béret avec sa tige trop longue et sa voilette qui flatte les teints brouillés. Des bandeaux de ballerines, des turbans, des chapeaux sauts coordonnés au tartan de la collection. Un chapeau de Monsieur Dior reproduit à l'identique.
J'ai demandé Dior Héritage pour toutes les photos, parce que c'est le chapeau original bas pour le défilé de 547. Et nous avons combiné toutes les photos pour mesurer exactement le bon taille.
toujours ses variations de béret à voilette, béret melon, chapeau en raffia et paille aérée, turban, bombe ronde coordonnée dans le tissu couture pour le jour, chapeau visière mystère, une cloche à visière, un fedora de film noir, béret clouté, casquette asymétrique, le béret à pompons ou tradi. Au sein de la maison Dior, Stephen Jones se plie au rite annuel de la Sainte Catherine. Ce jour-là, il coiffe en personne les dizaines, les centaines de Catherinettes et de Nicolas de la maison de couture. La tradition a évolué, mais il s'agit aujourd'hui de fêter les collaboratrices âgées de 25 ans et les collaborateurs âgés de 30 ans. Tous ensemble, ils défilent à la mairie de Paris et font une fête mémorable qui rassemble toute l'entreprise avec discours et cadeaux.
I've been working with Dior for 28 years now, and it is an amazing place to be, and I have never become used to it. It is the centre of fashion.
Avec Olympia Le Tan, il s'agit de se mettre au diapason d'une imagerie fantasque de parisienne. Alors, un tricorne coquin, un chaudron de plumes noires, des cache-oreilles hortensia. Un canotier pur avec le ruban trop long, un canotier avec un ruban crayon sur Gigi Hadid. La casquette d'écolier anglais avec son pompon de passementerie, serait-ce la casquette de rugby de son père qui revient ?
That was actually the very first season that I worked with him, and I did a whole series of hats inspired by animals. We did a hat like a bear, but all in matching grey tweed. So it's using the most classic techniques, maybe in the most unusual of shapes. So the inside is always perfectly finished. It really is haute mode.
But haute mode and carnival, you say? Or?
Haute mode and carnival, yeah. I mean, he's American. So Tom Brown really understands that world of pop culture, of Amal, of Walt Disney, of McDo.
Avec le mystérieux créateur américain Tom Brown, Stephen Jones peut sonder les possibilités d'un vestiaire. Toute une collection sur le deuil, un haut de forme de veillée funèbre, des voilettes, la bombe tortue parce que les regrets sont lents, le quart de casquette, le haut de forme catafalque, le canotier d'affliction, le bonnet pieuvre qui vous envahit comme le chagrin. Plus tard aussi, la casquette masque, la casquette scaphandre, la toque des chefs cuisiniers, le chapeau girafe, le rhinocéros, tout le zoo est bleu, blanc, rouge, le cheval, le cochon, jusqu'à ce chapeau pour un cow-boy en tweed, pastiche total qui avait cassé Internet ce jour-là. La collaboration avec Daniel Rosberry pour Schiaparelli est forcément très spectaculaire.
Daniel, I've known him for a long time because he was design director of Tom Brown. So when I first started working with Tom, I was working with Daniel on a day-to-day basis. And we have many things in common. But the thing which is extraordinary is that we're both drawers. With the stick in the sand, he could draw the most exquisite fashion illustration. I could not do that, but I really appreciate it. His pencil can express what a computer rendering cannot, because it's more evocative. So I think that's why he is known for the drama of the volume and how it's breathtaking what he can create.
Pour Schiaparelli par Daniel Rosberry, quand la collection est une ode au sud de la France, des capelines de paille, des gerbes de blé, des canotiers de lavande fraîche, un sombrero d'opéra, un oiseau posé sur le rebord, et c'est sympa pour celles qui n'ont pas les moyens, un demi-canotier, moitié prix on espère. Ces chapeaux pour la couture de l'été 2022 de Schiaparelli sont une apogée. Il travaille l'idée de l'apparition de l'auréole divine, des flammes surnaturelles, des scintillements, un cerveau d'or. Oui, regardez, son cerveau dépasse, c'est de l'or. Couture, une galaxie de plumes, des éblouissements d'église. Stephen Jones travaille aussi pour son compte, Stephen Jones Millinery, une entreprise basée à Londres. Ses coiffes peuvent aller du plus académique au plus dada, et au plus british bien sûr. Entendez kitsch. Ses collections personnelles suivent chaque saison des thèmes, l'espace, les jardins de Babylone, Shangri-La, Xanadu, Hollywood. Il faut commander et les chapeaux faits à la main sont faits sur mesure à la tête de la cliente et prennent 4 à 6 semaines de délai pour être livrés.
Ça, c'est toutes les invitations à toutes mes collections. Chacun, c'est une collection. This is the very first one here. This was for the 1st of October, 1980, and this was the invitation to my parents. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Jones, please come for a visit on Wednesday, the 1st of October, and have a look at what your talented son has done. Love, Kim.
Factual and formal.
Yeah. And this is the opening. This is my father and me. And this is the lady who taught me how to make hats.
What did your father tell you that day?
I think he was very confused by the entire process. And by me in general. But he was there, he did his duty and came. But what he was probably most interested in, there was a lady there in a completely transparent dress.
Oh wow, okay, yes.
So he was fascinated by her the entire evening, much more than any of the hats.
L'exposition de 2024 au Palais Galliera parle de Paris, les chapeaux faits pour Paris.
Hats are Parisian. I know for everybody else around the world, they think that hats are British, and that's because of the late Queen, and she always wore a hat. But for me, growing up, this sort of myth of a Parisian hat was symbolic and emblematic. If I think of Paris colours and think of that essence of the kitsch vision of femininity, which exists in Paris, it's black and pink. But you saw that in Lady Gaga's outfit from the opening of the first thing of the Olympics. She was wearing black and pink.
Et ce kitsch rassurant, ça c'est plaisant, c'est ce qu'on veut, cela fait aussi partie de la carte postale de la mode.
I think it fits into this idea of surrealism, of taking one object and putting it on your head. I mean, you could take a telephone and put it on your head and it becomes a hat, so it's Lady Gaga. You could take a shoe and put it on your head and it becomes Salvador Dali for Schiaparelli. You're taking a feather, something from a live bird, and you're putting it on your head. Who would have imagined? So it's one of the tricks of millinery is that has always happened.
So the door was always open.
The door is always open, yeah. And I went through it and never looked back.
This is a Chanel. This was my hat for Coco Chanel because I thought she would want to have something like a little bit fun. So the pearl and everything is a pearl hat pin which sticks out the edge, and the calotte is a camellia. But this is a real Chanel hat, one of the oldest which exists from 1908 or something, I can't remember.
What is it? It's
straw, piqué, with paradise feathers. Tous les petits lignes, ça c'est les petits rubans de paille.
C'est pas vrai?
Oui.
It's the first time I see a Chanel hat.
Lady Diana est l'une des têtes royales majeures chapeautées par Stephen Jones.
Everybody in France calls her Lady Diana, but I will always call her Diana, Princess of Wales.
Ah oui, Diana, princesse de Galles, pardon.
I knew her through British designer Jasper Conran. The first time I met her was at his studio, but then I started to go to Kensington Palace to meet her. And she was charming. It was the early part of her marriage, and it was a whole big world to explore. She was great. I mean, fitting hats at her dressing table when she was sitting down in front of me, and she was listening to Wham. That was Wham moment. That's when we used to dance around the room to Wham. And I mean, I do remember one anecdote is that there was some veiling and pins and things on a sofa, and then Nanny brought her sons in, and the older one, who was, this high, hit the pin somehow, and the pins all went up in the air, and I saw all the pins, and I just thought, oh my God, that's the future King of England, and I've just removed his eyesight. Yes, I make hats, but I can be a confidant. I can be a court jester. after everybody's been working so hard, I can come in at the last minute and make everybody seem sort of happy and they're doing something different. And it isn't the nightmare of handbags or shoes or whatever. You know, great, we can do a hat now. I can cheer everybody up.
How does it feel to have your own exhibition as a living designer in Bali Galera? Never happens.
No. How does it feel? It feels like another person. Of course, it's a huge honor. It's something that I never expected. But it has been delightful to do, and I'm so happy to be able to show what I've done. It's that in a way, very, very simple. And I know that hats are the ultimate eye candy. So whether you're a fashion person or a man or a child or whatever, you would get something from this exhibition. And I'm really happy to bring people into that world to show that I can give them a good time.
Merci beaucoup, Steven. Bien.
Thank you. Oh.
Merci d'avoir regardé, abonnez-vous pour tout voir de la mode. Et évidemment, il y a le catalogue Steven Jones, chapeau d'artiste. Il est tiré à 4000 exemplaires, donc c'est déjà une pièce collector. On a même eu la dédicace sur le tournage.
I'm much happier 67-year-old than I was a 20-year-old.
Yeah.
Oh my God, maybe you'll discover the truth.